Haunted History with Anne Burns in association with Haunted Magazine.
You're listening to The Crypt, and today on the show I'd like to welcome Anne Burns from Down Paranormal Research, who is back with her monthly segment Haunted History, which is now sponsored by Haunted Digital Magazine. So you're very welcome to the show, Anne.
Hi Rita, thanks very much, glad to be back.
Well, Anne, this time round we're taking a look at Bawnboy Workhouse. So could you tell us where the workhouse is and what its purpose was?
Rita, Bawnboy Workhouse is in County Cavan in the south of Ireland. The workhouse was basically an establishment that was set up to take care of what they called the problem of the poor. If you've ever seen the film Oliver Twist, you know, the little boy and he's got the bowl and he says, "Oh, please can I have some more?" You know, that kind of thing. That was all to do with the workhouse. And the workhouses were built and were intended to be harsh places. They didn't want people coming into these to the workhouse and basically living for free. They regarded the poor were poor because they were lazy. That's the way they viewed people. So only it was made to be harsh and strict, so that only the very destitute of people would actually sign themselves into this place. So very, very hard places, horrific actually, some of them. And Bawnboy is one of the later workhouses that came to Ireland. I think the Irish Poor Law Act was passed in 1838. So you see these workhouses right across both south and north of Ireland appearing, and Bawnboy was built in 1852. So it is one of the later ones.
So if a family was sent to Bawnboy, what would have happened once they walked through the workhouse gates?
Bawnboy is a vast building. It's actually several buildings. As you walk up to it, there's a gate in the middle, and then there's on the left-hand side was the female quarters, and on the right-hand side were the male quarters. Say if the like of yourself was to go in, you would be the husband, the males, the boys of the family would be sent to the right-hand side and the females to the left. When you went in, your clothes were taken from you. You would have been scrubbed and washed, probably deloused, and a uniform was given to you. The uniform actually was also a way of keeping them in the workhouse. If they left with the uniform on them, then they could be accused of stealing. So it was another way of making sure that they stayed where they were. They did as they were told. So if you went in, if your children were of the age of 2 or above, they were taken from you. Husbands and wives were separated because they didn't want any more children being born. So it was extreme segregation of male and female and families. The only time you would have seen the rest of your family was probably on the Sunday in the chapel, where everybody came in, and possibly during meal times. But you were not allowed to speak to them. You know, it wasn't that you were going over and talking and able to hug them or whatever. It was extreme segregation. You were kept apart. But I think the most, upsetting bit is walking in and, a child of 2 being taken from you, it must have been absolutely awful for them, really, a terrible place. It was run extremely strictly, and that was the way they wanted it to be. It had to be like that.
Oh my God, that is so brutal. The poor families.
Yeah, it's very upsetting, when you put yourself in their shoes and imagine your children, and not see, it must have been awful, absolutely awful. And the women would have kept to the left-hand side. The girls were taken, they would have been put into classrooms. They all had jobs to do, stitching, things like that. The men were over on the other side. Same would have happened to them. The boys were put into the classrooms. They all would have had jobs and duties. And also you have to remember the type of people that were going into the workhouses were, the sort of worst off people. There would have been people who had mental issues, people that were maybe having, trouble with alcohol, alcoholics, orphans, the very lowest of the low as they would have been regarded, the people that needed the most help, they were all thrown in together. And, so it would have been quite a harrowing experience for them all.
And you can imagine how hard life must have been for them to take that step to sign themselves into Bawnboy.
Yeah, it must have been awful. I have read, now this doesn't correspond with Bawnboy itself, but I have read, I've been sort of researching over the workhouses and what life was like and things like that. And a lot of them had no, if they left, they had nothing to go to. They were basically living on the street, did nothing. And some people, the only way out of regime was to take their own lives, and a lot of them did. It was very, very hard times that we really can't even imagine now, I suppose.
And then when did it close down?
The workhouse officially closed down in 1921, and there was a school that was opened, because it did have its own schoolrooms, that had its own bakehouse, infirmary, even its own jail, things like that. So it was a little, microcosm, if you know what I mean. It was a little world of its own. It had all its bits and pieces that it worked through. So it carried on as a school, part of it, until actually 1967. And then the bakehouse, where they baked all the bread for the people that lived, that were in the workhouse, it carried on providing bread for the village. And there would have been Irish dancing classes, and they did run dances and social events as well. Mm-hmm. So I think the last time anything like that went on would have been in the late 70s. But when the workhouse closed down, the nurse, the matron, and the schoolmistress stayed on as tenants and lived in the building for many years. So I would say it must have been shortly after they had either passed away or had moved on that it closed down.
And then what's happening with the building now?
Well, the building now has been taken over. There's the Bawnboy Committee are actually trying desperately to save this part of history in Bawnboy. Now, it's quite a mammoth task, I have to say, because the buildings are so huge, but looking back over video and photographs from even a couple of years ago, they are doing great work to try and preserve Bawnboy, so that people know and don't forget that part of history. Yeah. A lot of workhouses have been demolished and no longer exist. So, as I say, it is a very, very hard task for them. And, we're hoping that we can, raise a bit of revenue for them to go towards the refurbishment of the building and, preserve it. So they're doing a great job. And, I think it's wonderful what they're doing,
Well, a building that size, I can imagine how much it'd cost as well.
Yeah, it's very expensive. They have been getting help. Local people have fixed windows and things like that, and they're getting there steadily. But there's such a vast amount of it that still needs a lot of care and attention. And it really is a fascinating building inside. You can see the very sacks that they lay on. They didn't have beds. They would have had a wooden platform in the in the rooms with like a walkway down the centre, and they would have been given a sack, like an old sack filled with straw, and that's where they slept. And the sacks are actually still there. You can still see them. There's old shoes and things like that. It's actually a fascinating building.
Down Paranormal have investigated Bawnboy. So when you first entered the building, what was the atmosphere like?
Well, when we first went to the building, there had never actually been any reports of anything in the building. We went there really for the historical interest of it and to see, obviously, a place that's quite, had such a harrowing history and, that kind of thing. So when we went, it's a very imposing building. And the first time we were there, it was pitch black when we got there, but we were taken round on a tour by one of the committee members, and they told us, the sort of history and things and what each room was for. And I have to say, it had quite a sad, oppressive feeling to it, I felt. And I think obviously because, we were hearing about, the families being split, it was actually quite upsetting. And that you could definitely feel in the building, But it was great also to go around it and have the opportunity of seeing inside somewhere like that, because, as I say, there's not many of them in existence anymore.
I can imagine standing there and looking at the sacks and just putting yourself in the shoes of those poor people. It must have really got you.
Yeah, one of the things, we were up in the female sleeping quarters, and you can see these sacks lying, and she was telling us, the lady from the committee was telling us about what was called the Bawnboy Howl, and it was when the children were put to bed at night. Lights or whatever it was were turned off at 7 o'clock, and the children were just left there to go to sleep, and they used to cry themselves to sleep, and you could hear it down in the village, and they used to call it the Bawnboy Howl, this howling of these little children, and that just, it was very upsetting, to imagine. It must have been awful for them, and so cold, and very, very, very harsh conditions.
Well, you guys were the first team to investigate Bawnboy, so what kind of findings did you have?
Yeah, well, as I say, there was no reports of anything. We were really going in to have a look at the history of it and, see what we could. We didn't know if there was going to be anything. So it was very interesting, and we are going to be taking the next year or so to be, carrying out more investigations at Bawnboy to see, if we can build on what we've already found and things like that. So it'll be, it's an ongoing process. It also shows that, this is the sort of side of it that people don't really see, that you have to go in, and it's a lot of sitting about and waiting and patience and trying to capture things, and whether they're paranormal or not, you really don't know, but it's good fun, to have the opportunity to go in places like this and write everything down. So we did actually get some very good results. In particular, I've heard of the spirit box before. We've spoken about the spirit box before, where you ask questions and you get these answers. You've seen people will know them. They've seen them on those TV programs. So we actually did get some very good results from that. Not just one-word answers, but full sentences that repeated our names and things like that. And we asked for names of people that were there. We got names through, which turned out to be very interesting. And we heard voices and things like that. Very atmospheric, the place is. It really is. So for our first investigation there, we come out and we were quite impressed with what we got. You can't for definite say that, oh, that place is haunted, but it was a great experience,
Well, while on the investigation, you got a name that kept coming through many times, repeating over and over. Did you find out if that name had any importance to Bawnboy?
Again, that was during the Spirit Box, or the SB7 session, as we would call it. We got a name. I'm not going to say the name
that's no problem.
On here because we are trying to encourage other teams to, if they want to go and do an investigation in Bawnboy. So I don't want to give away anything.
Yeah. See if they get
if they get the same name and report it back to us, it'll be fantastic. But this one particular name it repeated itself over and over and over and over again. And we sort of thought it was very insistent. You know, that's the feeling that we got from it. Richard happened to mention it to one of the ladies on the committee, and she didn't know anything about the name, didn't recognise the name. But just a few weeks back, she contacted Richard and said that she'd been going through some archives, and this name had come up, and it is linked with Bawnboy, and an event that happened there where this person was brought in. I think it was something to do with a criminal matter, and so that was very interesting to actually have that name to come back again, you know, because it's not something that even the committee could just find on the internet. It wasn't there, you know. She actually had to go into, I think it was National Archives or something that she got the information from. So that was pretty good.
Well, you see, that's the great thing about it, because, you know, well-known sites that people go and investigate all the time, you kind of know the characters connected to the building, so you're going to be listening out for that. Mm-hmm. Where this, you got this name, you knew nothing about it, and the fact that it showed up in the archives is amazing. Yeah, well, again, you know, it's you know, it helps us on what we're trying to do, is just to find out things, you know. When something like that happens, you can go, oh, well, there you go. You know, it has appeared, and, you know, there is a connection with that name. So it's very exciting for us, you know, when things like that happen, because it's like, oh, brilliant, you know. So, no, we're very pleased about that. Well, hopefully now anybody who's listening, if they ever do get the opportunity to investigate Bawnboy, that they'd contact your Facebook page, Down Paranormal Research, and let you know what names they come up with, just to see if they do match. Yeah, if anybody does want to, you know, expresses an interest, they will have to come through Down Paranormal. They can't approach Bawnboy themselves. They will have to come through us, and we will organise, you know, any investigations for them and dates and things like that. So they're very welcome to contact us on the page. And there has been other teams out, and so it would be nice to hear back, you know. So that's why I don't want to give out the name, because it's suggestion. They might, you know, hear it, and, you know, but it would be fantastic. Again, it reinforces it if somebody else comes in and says, we kept getting this particular name, do you know anything about it? And, you know, that would be fantastic. So that would be the good stuff. Well, do you know, I seen the video that you shared on Facebook after being to Bawnboy, where you were with the ghost box. And you were asking your names. Richard said, what's my name? And you got Anne. And you go, did it just say Anne? And Richard goes, no, I asked for my name. And then next minute from the ghost box, it said, no, that's Anne's name. That was freaky. Yeah, that was the session that I was referring to, because it's so unusual to get sentences, and it wasn't just one time that it happened a lot. Richard had asked, could you tell me my name, meaning Richard, and it said Anne, and then Richard said, but that's not my name, and then it replied, yes, but it's Anne's name. There was also, again, on that video, we had asked about the children. One of the questions was about the children. Were your children with you? And the reply was something like, no, they've taken them away. And so, you know, that was very interesting in itself, you know. So you ask questions and you get an answer like that, and it's not just one word, you know, it's a full sentence. It's, you know, it's actually very exciting. Well, Anne, this is the first time we featured a location that's virtually unknown, and as you said there, Down Paranormal plan on doing more investigations throughout 2016 at the workhouse. So will people be able to follow your findings after each investigation? Yes, that's right, Rita. We will be taking the rest of the year to, as you know, it is
a work in progress, I suppose. So, and we are trying to build up, and just find out more about the building itself and and anything else that we can find out about it. So, we'll be taking the rest of the year doing some more investigations, and any findings we will have up on our page. So if anybody's interested in following the story of Bawnboy and what we're doing there, if they just log on to our Facebook page, Down Paranormal Research, they can see what we find.
That's fantastic. Well, Anne, thank you so much. That's been a really fascinating haunted history, and I'm really looking forward to having you back on again next month.
That's great, Rita. Thanks very much. Thanks for having me.
Haunted History with Anne Burns in association with Haunted Magazine.